Hey everyone, today's video is going to be breakfast, lunch and dinner ideas for only £1. I've done a few different videos like this before where I shared like lunch recipes for £1, dinner recipes for £1. I also obviously do my weekly meal plans, which are a similar sort of vibe, but kind of affordable eating. But today I thought it'd be interesting to do almost like a what I eat in a day style video, but every single meal I eat will be £1 or less. All of the prices I took from the Asda website, so obviously this will vary depending on where you shop. I also did it so that the costs depend on how much of that ingredient you use rather than the price of that ingredient as a whole, if that makes sense. But let me know if you guys like this idea, if you want to see more videos like this, or if you prefer like the one type of meal idea in one. So like one whole video about breakfast or lunch, etc. But otherwise, I will just get started with the breakfast I've been having recently. Now, this is literally my go-to. I probably have this maybe like 4 or 5 times a week. You guys would have seen it on my channel already, and that is porridge. So not anything crazy exciting, but it's an absolute staple for me. Really healthy, really filling, great for winter now that it's getting a little bit colder outside. Also from like a nutritional standpoint, it's got you covered in terms of carbs, protein and fats. All in all, a really good breakfast idea. So for this I use 50 grams of porridge oats. You can get a bag of porridge oats from Asda for 75p. So that means each portion is only around 4p. I also use protein powder in my porridge, which is obviously completely optional, but I did include it in the price because that's a fairly expensive ingredient. So it works out about 40p per portion. So obviously if you're not using protein powder, this meal will be even cheaper. I basically just mix the two of them together with 100 mils of soy milk. Now you can get a carton of soy milk for 55p from Asda. So that works out about 6p per 100 milliliter. And then I also mix in some tap water as well, just to get to the right kind of consistency. I microwave that. Honestly, I just eyeball it. I think it probably ends up being a minute or so, and then I stir it, and then I pop it in for another 30 seconds, just until it's like the right texture. And then obviously you can top porridge with whatever you fancy, but my go-to combination is always peanut butter and jam. Honestly, you can't beat it, and both of those ingredients you can find pretty affordably. In Asda I found a jar of peanut butter for 92p, so for a 20 gram portion that works out at around 6p. And then again I found a jar of jam for 28p, so for 20 grams that's only 2p per meal. And then finally I always like to top my porridge with some fruit as well, so you can get a bag of frozen mixed berries for £2. So for 100 grams of that it is 40p, and all in all that meal comes to 98p. So obviously without the protein powder that would be more around the 60p mark. Super affordable and such an easy breakfast to switch up. You can obviously add different spices. I normally mix some cinnamon in with mine. You can switch up the toppings, switch up the nut butters, switch up the jams, switch up the fruit. Honestly, there's like 100 different varieties you could do with this same porridge recipe, and it's such a cheap and easy meal to make. Honestly, at the moment I have it for lunch most days because I'm just on a real porridge hype at the moment, but it's honestly one of the quickest meals you can make on a lunch break, and it ticks all the boxes in terms of nutrition. So if you're not currently on the porridge hype, I definitely recommend getting on it. For lunch I went with a bagel. Now I wanted to try and pick something that I haven't necessarily shown a whole load on my channel before, but a really easy lunch idea with a bagel would be something like beans on a bagel with mushrooms, sausages, all things like that you can make really affordably. For my lunch today, I decided to go with a vegan egg mayo bagel, which is something a little bit different for me. It's definitely something I've made in the past, but it's not something I make super regularly. For this, you're obviously going to need a bagel, so you can buy a bag of bagels for £1, so 20p per bagel. You're also going to want some tofu, so you can get a block of tofu for £2 10p, and a quarter of that ends up being 53p. And then I also like to add cucumber in mine, so you can get a cucumber for 43p, so for a quarter of that it's around 11p. Now for most of these recipes I didn't include kind of like oils or spices in the prices, because I think a lot of the time people have those things at home anyway. But for this recipe I do like to make a homemade vegan mayo, and for that you need vegetable oil, soy milk and apple cider vinegar as well. So I did try and kind of work out the prices of how much you would need. Obviously I'm not going to make like a huge batch of mayonnaise if it's just being used in one meal, so I'll link the vegan mayonnaise recipe I use down below. I generally make half of the recipe, and you probably only need a quarter of that half for this meal. So I worked that out at around 11p for the oil and 2p for the soy milk, and then I couldn't even work out the vinegar. But generally it'd be pretty inexpensive when you're making your own mayonnaise. I also like to season that with some salt and pepper, some garlic powder as well. It makes it taste really good. And then essentially it's just a case of making up the vegan egg. So for this I drain the tofu, I dry it as much as I can, get out as much excess liquid, and then just crumble that into chunks. And then I mix that with a healthy spoonful of the homemade mayonnaise and a bit of black salt. So that is the main ingredient that you'll want to get if you want it to taste kind of eggy. Some people might not want that, but black salt has this kind of like sulfury taste. It's a little bit gross when you describe it, but you just need to add like the tiniest amount of that and it adds that kind of like eggy flavour. So in terms of the prices for that, I will leave a link to the one that I purchased on Amazon down below. I'm pretty sure it was maybe like £1 or £2, and you get a huge thing that will probably last you a lifetime, because I use like the smallest amount when I make any sort of like vegan egg foods. So again, I didn't include that in the price because I didn't know how to work out like 1/100th of a packet. I mean, that would be a pretty easy sum, but you know what I mean. It was kind of like so non-existent, that price, that I didn't include it. But in total, this recipe came to 93p. So there is technically 7p there to cushion whatever extra spend you might need for the black salt. But you basically add that in with the mayonnaise and the tofu. You've obviously seasoned the mayonnaise already. You can add some more seasoning here. You can add some more garlic powder, a little bit of turmeric to give it like that yellow colour to make it look a little bit more realistic. Mix it up, toast your bagel, put it on your bagel with some slices of cucumber, and it's really that simple. You can make the mayonnaise and the tofu mixture in advance, so for a couple of days you can keep it in the fridge and just make up the bagels fresh each day. Super quick then, again really filling, full of protein from the tofu. You've got fats from the mayonnaise, carbohydrates from the bagel, again really balanced meal and tastes so good. And then finally for dinner, I'm making something that I've made like a variation of multiple times on my channel, and that is chili with rice. It's definitely one of my go-to recipes because I like to make it in bulk, freeze it, and then when I can't be bothered to cook during the week, I will just take out a portion and heat it up. Makes life a lot simpler. So this recipe I would say makes around 6 portions. So you can get a kilogram of rice for £1.50, which works out around 63p for 6 portions. I originally wanted to pick up some soy chunks for this recipe, but they didn't have any in Asda. But you can get 200 grams of soy chunks for £1.50, so that works out around 80p for 6 portions. Instead, I just picked up some mince, which works just as well and also has kind of the high protein content as well. Some chili con carne seasoning, so I kind of cheated with this one. You obviously can buy all of the individual spices, but sometimes it's easier just to buy a mix that has it all in there for you. So I picked up a packet of seasoning for 21p, 300 grams of peppers for 58p, an onion for 19p, a can of lentils for 55p, a can of black beans for 55p, and a can of kidney beans for 30p, a carton of passata for 40p, and then a stock cube as well for 11p. So in total that comes to £4.32, but then obviously that makes 6 portions, so it works out around 72p a portion. Really cheap, really affordable, and you can again jazz this up as much as you want. So if you have an avocado in, I would recommend putting some guacamole on top, especially to add some fat into the dish. I normally serve this with tortilla chips on the side as well, which I think is a great combination. So again, there's a little bit of room in that £1 budget to add some extras, maybe some vegan cheese, things like that. I will link another recipe down below where I actually make this chili in more detail, but generally I'll just chop up the veg, so the peppers and the onions, fry that in a little bit of oil until they're soft, and then I'll add the rinsed and drained lentils, kidney beans and black beans. I'll also add in the soy chunks, which if you are using soy chunks, I recommend rehydrating them first with the stock cube. I obviously was using mince this time round, but I did the same. I just put them in a jug with a little bit of stock to rehydrate, and then I added that to the mixture as well. Gave it a good mix, added the passata. I also filled up the carton of passata with water to rinse it out and add some more liquid. Stirred in the seasoning packet and then basically just let it simmer for as long as possible. I definitely think chili is one of those meals that tastes even better the next day in my opinion. So let it simmer for as long as possible, and then I just cook up some rice, serve it with the rice and any extras. Again, it's just such an easy recipe to have in your freezer for when you just can't be bothered to cook in the evening. So those are the £1 breakfast, lunch and dinner ideas I had to share with you guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you would make if you had to make breakfast, lunch and dinner for £1. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.